Hey, everybody, and welcome to The Brand Called You. I am super excited about our guest today, Kit Robison. I'm excited because, on the one hand, I've known Kit for, I'd say, over 20 years. And on the other hand, I've recently realized I don't know Kit at all. But I will tell you, the first time I met Kit was in a hardware store in Jeffersonville, New York, about 2 hours from New York City in the Catskill Mountains. I think it was in the light bulb aisle. And quickly we began talking about theology and realized we were kindred spirits. So about 2 weeks after that, I threw Kit in my car and we drove up a sinusoidal hill, 209 past Ellenville, to hear a incredible lecture series by the famous Bruce Chilton, professor of theology at Bard College, whose specialty is the Jewish roots of Christianity. And it was during these incredibly interesting rides that I was so enlightened by Kit about Christianity. I mean, Kit actually taught me about Judaism, and I'm Jewish. And it was really remarkable. And I felt such a kinship. And eventually, Kit got transferred, doing missionary work in places like Honduras, Long Island, and Florida, among others. And we kind of lost touch. But then through the magic of Facebook about a year ago, Kit's face suddenly reappeared, although in slightly different form. The Kit I knew, a family man, a husband, a father to children that were remarkable, had become a woman. Kit transitioned, and I hadn't known it, nor had I any inkling that there was anything vaguely uncomfortable about his being, although he would later admit to me there was. And I'm super fascinated about this experience. Just briefly, and I'm so frightened I'm going to get my pronouns wrong, Kit, but she lost her job at the Lutheran church, ended a marriage, and there were so many transitions, and I want to hear about it all. So welcome, Kit.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long time since that light bulb aisle in Jeffersonville, New York, hasn't it?
It has. And I mean, I guess it's, my story is not so unusual that so many people I know who've had friends that transition didn't have an inkling that anything was looming inside the person they were friends with. But I guess that's not true, is it?
Well, no, and yet at the same time, I think when we met, I didn't have any inkling. I should have.
You didn't?
But it has always been there. But I had buried it so deep in a closet, I didn't even know I had a closet. And then one day a friend asked me the question, do you hear how you refer to yourself? And I referred to my wife and my kids and myself as the corporate we and the corporate she.
You would say we girls, that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. It was we girls are going off to do X, Y, and Z. And so when I was not paying attention, my self-referent was female.
Did you have like a network of guys? Did you do classic guy stuff?
I tried very hard to be a guy. And it's funny because when I transitioned, a couple of my parishioners said, but you're so stereotypically male. And I'm like, there's the problem, right? I adopted a male construct. It wasn't just who I was, it was this construct. And so I came across as stereotypically male because the only way for a woman to be a man is to say, oh, okay, so this is what it means to be a man. This is the box I need to fit in. Let me fit. But even they go back, like, I don't remember if you remember the Day to Be Gay. It was over in North Branch. And it was a family-friendly version of Pride, basically. Rural family-friendly version of Pride.
Seems like an oxymoron, but I'll believe you.
And I think it was Victoria was announcing, said, sort of, okay, we're going to do a tug of war. All the femmes over there, all the butches over there. And I just said, I can't do this. Because I knew where I wanted to be at some level, and I knew where the world expected me. I was the pastor of a church. I mean,
You had mentioned to me that you were preppier than preppy. Was that also a construct? Like,
yeah, oh, totally. From the age of 13 on, my life is a construct.
but isn't that true for all of us? I mean, don't we all dress the preppy dress when we know it's expedient and so forth?
Well, okay, so there's dress the preppy dress, which is fine. I mean, that's just fashion. Or even if you decide like this is the area of society I want to be part of, right? I want to be part of that group, and that group dresses preppy, so I'm going to dress preppy. Fine. But that generally comes out of who you are. It's a choice on your part. My choice was, what is the thing that's not going to get me noticed? What is the thing that's going to get me liked? What's the thing that's, that the world wants? Because it was sort of the culmination of 6 or 7 years of work trying to get to a place where I didn't get beat up on the way home from school. In third grade.
I know it wasn't the Jewish kids beating you up, right?
No. They've long been my friends. Oh.
That was never our MO. We never really had fisty punches,
No. Yeah, but there were, and what I know now is that there were two things going on there, right? One is that I'm neurodiverse, so I don't do a very good job of mirroring what the world expects. I don't do a very good job of understanding what other people are implying. Like, I don't get the implications behind the conversation usually. There's a piece of our brain that's actually designed to mirror the emotions of the person across from us. So that we understand, is this friend or foe, and in neurodiverse people, this just goes a little wonky.
In other words, kind of clueless.
Yeah, basically, I was clueless to social norm, and so that was getting me beat up. And obviously, part of that was that I wanted to play mom when we played house, and I wanted heels, and I wanted to, like, all the stuff that, like, in second, third grade, even back to kindergarten, was just not acceptable. It's just like I lived in a world where this was just not what we had. I mean, we're talking the mid 70s.
Well, plus, I mean, you were steeply raised in the Lutheran Church, no?
Well, actually, I was raised Presbyterian, this wonderful joint Presbyterian Episcopal congregation.
Escapade. It sounds like an ice cream flavor. So what, tell me about how that influenced your behavior.
Well, it's interesting because we had a large gay and lesbian population in the congregation. I had a female pastor growing up. So I grew up in fairly progressive spaces. But trans had no representation. Trans just didn't exist in that world. Trans was the ballroom scene in New York City at that stage of the game.
And you never really felt gay. I mean, you never felt attracted to other men, really, per se.
No. My kids will tell you I was a lesbian trapped in a man's body from 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
What do you mean your kids will tell you? They picked up on saying you didn't?
No, that was the joke in the house when my kids were younger.
What?
Yeah. My kids would joke around that I was a lesbian trapped in a man's body.
Wow.
It's like we talk about, like, there's all these little, like, details that go way back, As somebody who has autism, I'm subject to meltdowns, not so much anymore, thankfully. I've learned to deal with them. But one of my grandest meltdowns was over a dollhouse that got broken.
Whose dollhouse?
Mine.
As a kid?
I had a dollhouse as a kid. Yeah.
How did that happen?
Oh, my father built it for me. I had really cool parents. And it's funny because, like, my parents are both the people who taught me how to mask, right? How to put on a persona that the world could accept. and these really cool, accepting people who just wanted me to be me and happy.
But were they surprised when you actually transitioned, or was it something that they kind of expected?
Well, Mom passed before I transitioned, and there's some indication she might not have accepted it terribly well.
That have to do with your timing? Were you waiting for her to?
I don't think I was. I mean, if I was, it was a subconscious question. Certainly in her life, I tried to come out to her towards the end.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I was talking to her about, my feminine side and how I need to embrace more of it and all that. And she's like, whatever you need to do, as long as nobody gets hurt.
Did she fully know what you were saying?
I think she did. And I think she was sort of like, batting it off a little bit, sort of bunt and hope that it goes away. Yeah. Dad has been a gem. My father has been an absolute gem about the whole thing. Thankfully, at the time that I decided to transition, I had two of my daughters living in his house, and the older of the two was like, she knew this was coming. And so she says, I'm going to spend a few minutes helping Grampy understand some of the construct stuff before we get there.
You told me that it might have led to alcoholism in your case. Do you think that?
Very much so.
Can you explain that?
I mean, I don't know that it led to alcoholism. It certainly fed my alcoholism. And that was, so at 13, I put on this persona that the world could accept. Preppy, male. I mean, I was the kid that the parents loved. You shouldn't hang out with my son. Yeah, they were Jewish. He's a bad influence on you. I just point out that in my marriage, when I got married, there were two Jews and a goy standing with me. And none of the three of them ever went to rehab. And their parents were the ones that thought they were a bad influence on me.
Yeah.
So anyway, at 13, I found this persona. And I also found alcohol. And the reality is the alcohol provided this insulation between me, the real me, and what I was presenting to the world.
So tell me about what happened with your post at Lutheran Church. Was it a slow dissolution after you announced, or were they accepting of it? I'd love to hear what happened.
So the national church was accepting, in the sense that, okay, so, we ordain male, we ordain female. Doesn't matter whether you're male or female. We ordain gays and lesbians, so it doesn't matter whether you're gay or lesbian. Basically, there's one set of rules that everybody plays by.
Was this actually codified by the Lutheran Church formally?
Yes. What's interesting about that codification is, and it's the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, to be very clear. There are a couple of other Lutheran denominations that would not accept this. Missouri Synod wouldn't accept this. Wisconsin Synod wouldn't accept this. They're just much more. And there's a couple of other breakaways that have, like many churches, the conservative part of a denomination sort of broke away and did their own thing. So in the way it's codified, it says, anybody can be a pastor, in the sense of, like, so long as they're chaste and they follow all the other rules and they preach and teach according to Lutheran doctrine. And so it doesn't matter whether you're gay or lesbian or trans or cis or whatever, from the national church. But any given congregation is welcome to call or not call a pastor based upon their understanding of theology. So the congregation may have a much stricter, or not stricter, much more conservative understanding of theology, which then means that they don't want a gay pastor, or they don't want a trans pastor, or they don't want to, and they
Yeah.
don't have to have them.
Yeah, that's sort of like the rabbis answering to the crazy boards at their synagogue.
Right.
But is that what happened in your case?
So what happened in my case is I came out the Sunday after Easter, and then we spent.
But you waited. You waited.
I waited until after Easter, and then I thought I'll give them a resurrection story. We're gonna resurrect this person.
And boy, did you rise. So,
yeah, and
so you, all right, you announced,
I
and
announced, and then we had
were
a
there
night.
gasps? I mean, paint the picture for me. Did Mrs. Peacock in the corner mouth drop, or were they all yawning because they knew already, or what?
No. I mean, it was a very carefully planned event that where there was representation from the synod there, which is sort of a larger organization that helps us, so that there would be people other than myself to help have conversations with these parishioners if they were just like needed time or needed a conversation. So it was a very carefully constructed, orchestrated event. It went well. I mean, it went as well. Obviously, there were people in the audience that went, "What?" Had they been paying attention, the hair was starting to grow out, the skin was getting a little softer.
Had you been taking?
Because I've been taking I'd taken hormones.
When
I'd been on testosterone blockers for more than a year, and I'd been on full hormone replacement therapy for a couple of months at that point.
So you had planned this well in advance.
Yeah, I mean, there was 6 months ahead of that I was talking to the bishop's office so that they would know what was up. And
right. So yeah, but so were there any kind of shocking reactions, or?
Well, I mean, I think the more conservative of the members in the congregation. I mean, yeah. So the more conservative members of the congregation, it was just like too much for them. They didn't, they don't see this as part of God's kingdom, how God's kingdom works. Assigned male at birth, remain male for the rest of your life.
This couldn't have come of too much of a shock to you, right?
No, I mean, I knew, what I didn't know. I mean, and the thing is, so we had this like 3-month conversation, right? And in this 3-month, during this 3-month conversation, it turns out that I got interviewed by a newspaper in Miami here. Which led a couple of people to be just mortified and very much worried that this was going to hit the national news and that this is going to become a thing. And it got published in a local newspaper and sort of dissipated from there. Nothing happened. But after the 90-day conversation, then we had a vote on my tenure there as a pastor. I was due for a vote anyhow. It has to do with some funny work around the fact that I was basically plunked into this congregation and told, here's your pastor, and in 3 years you're going to vote on whether or not to keep them.
Yeah.
We were at the 3-year mark, and so I just made this part of that whole conversation about whether or not I should continue. Interestingly, while I didn't have the 2/3 vote necessary to stay, I did have more than 50% of the congregation vote in favor of keeping me there.
I mean, were you devastated?
I mean, I think at some level I was in the immediate, like, you're the pastor. This is a big part of who you are. This is a big part of what you do. However, what I also know is that there had been a piece of me for quite some time that had been questioning, do I believe enough of what the Lutheran Church teaches to continue? When you're installed in the congregation, they install you with the promise to preach and teach according to Lutheran doctrine, right? And it was getting to a place where I was kind of like, do I believe enough of what the Lutheran Church teaches to preach and teach according to the Lutheran doctrine. And so there's this sort of like parallel track going on at the same time. On the one side, I'm devastated. I mean, this is my congregation. This is the work I do. This is my livelihood. And on the other side, and this is really the side now that I think I look at and go, yep, this is the direction it needed to go, even though it's not the direction I would have pushed.
In Judaism, there's a folkloric character, well, also biblical, but in folklore, Elijah the prophet, he comes down at Passover to sip wine, but God also sends him down to test your faith in God, to teach you lessons. And he comes in disguise, like he'll come as a beggar or a rabbi or an old man. And I'm thinking that sort of God sent you, a dress and a flowery shirt and some fabulous shoes, it was kind of Elijah leading you maybe down the path you always should have been. I don't know.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, it was funny. I saw somebody was carrying the Book of Joy today, and it's a book that is dear to my heart because, I think that the teachings of Jesus make a lot of sense. I'm not sure the church does anymore.
Can you? I'm not too familiar with the specifics of Lutheranism, but what part of it did you struggle with, and did you really have a hard time reconciling with?
Well, first off, I mean, I really was getting to a place where I struggled with the question of salvation through Christ, which is a basic church tenet. It's not just a Lutheran
Can you
tenet.
break that down for me as a Jewish girl? I don't quite know.
Yeah. So Jesus was this Jew who showed up a couple thousand years ago. And there's historic documentation that this was a real person. I mean, it's outside just the church world. And there was this historic person, and he taught a different way. I mean, I think to the way you and I would conversate about this is he was sort of the Reconstructionist.
He was a groovy Reconstructionist rabbi with a guitar.
Yeah, and he taught love and tolerance and all these other really cool things. Yeah. I mean, the most basic speech he ever gave was to put it in Jewish terms, to bring the 10 Commandments together, right?
Mm-hmm. So the salvation part is something that was indeed a construct, is what you're saying. I
think it is. Yeah. I mean, I don't think he ever intended it to be salvation through Christ.
And
there are some things he said.
Are you implying that he didn't see himself as the Messiah?
That's hard to say, because certainly to the extent that the stories are true, at least towards the end, he embraced the messianic mantle. But, and this is the sort of like rub question, right? Did he embrace it as, I am the Son of God, which would be the Christian way of looking at it? Or did he embrace it more in the sense of what we look at when we come into Buddhism, right? And you have the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva are these enlightened beings who choose to stay on earth and pass along some of that, try and be a raft, if you will, to help people coming behind them to the next level.
And so it was becoming increasingly harder for you to preach, given your cynicism about that extremely fundamental principle. Yeah,
absolutely. Not to mention the fact that Buddhism was growing in my heart. And one of the things that I mean, you and I have both studied religion at a fairly deep level. So I think you'll agree that when you get into the highest levels of teaching of religion, and the highest levels of thinking really in religion, not even teaching, but thinking, most of these religions sort of come to some very similar places. And I'm not just talking the Abrahamic religions, but that's why you have the Book of Joy, which was co-written by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu.
Yeah.
Sort of like the pinnacle of Christianity and the pinnacle
So you were
of Buddhism came together to write a book.
you were kind of feeling like a fraud towards the end of your tenure as a
In ways, yeah.
Let me ask you, because we're almost coming to the end of our
Yeah.
time.
Wow.
Where are you now? Tell our viewers where you're at, and
Well, right.
spiritually as well as vocationally.
So, I mean, I reside in Miami these days, which is wonderful. The weather is great. I managed to live where most people vacation. Not a bad gig. But then vocationally, a couple things I do right now. One, I work for Trader Joe's, and because it fits within my life's mission and my life's work, which has become world peace, one person at a time. Like, I just work to help the next person be at peace with themselves.
Wow, I never thought I would find that at Trader Joe's. No, but I'm joking, but of course,
Yeah.
always believe that, it's in the small interactions that you find God. It's where
Right.
it's not in the spiritual place per se, but it's where the spiritual and the mundane collide.
Right.
Yeah.
So I bring this
that's
forward.
aisle 3. That's aisle 3, clearly.
Exactly. We're gonna do it in the frozen aisle tomorrow.
It's beautiful.
Right now, it's the holiday season. I'm doing it by managing the cookie candy section.
Do you, in all seriousness, do you have many encounters that make you feel like you're doing nothing different than you did before in some ways?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I just have a bigger congregation than I used to.
Wow.
And I don't worry about whether the paycheck's going to bounce or not. I mean,
Wow. Was there anything in particular you can remember at Trader Joe that felt like a kind of particularly spiritual moment?
Oh, I mean, like the other week, a few days ago, I was talking to a customer, pulled me aside and just wanted to thank me because I'd given them some flowers. I'd found out that their wife wasn't doing terribly well, was in the hospital, whatnot. And so I'd given them some flowers to take to their wife.
Oh.
And so they were back in and they introduced me to their mom.
Oh.
Talked about how much this meant to them and how important it was and how much joy and happiness it brought to them into their world. So, I mean, but isn't that what salvation is about?
Wow, I just got such chills down my spine.
Are
there any other stories?
Oh, there's thousands of
Just
stories.
give me one more.
So there was a woman that came in and she buys Oriental lilies, right? And she was very particular about Oriental lilies. And we had at that point a display of, I don't know, probably 200-300 bouquets of Oriental lilies. And she'd gone through and very carefully picked out the ones she wanted. And then went and did her shopping. I had put her cart aside. Somebody thought the cart was abandoned, so they put all the lilies back in the buckets. And then, and then I got to what happened. And so I went through and talked with her and helped her to regather the lilies that she really wanted. And in the process, really learned what she wanted out of a lily, right? And out of that became a friendship, right? So here's an interaction that could have been like the end of this customer for this store. And instead it was like every time she came in, she'd go, help me pick out some lilies. And we'd have a conversation. And it turns out she was a speech therapist. And so in my part of my transition, she gave me some pointers on how to work on my voice. And this whole neat back and forth really that came about because, I tried.
You have not resigned from the pastorhood.
Oh, from pastoring people? No, I guess I look at it more as mothering people today than pastoring people.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I'm doing coaching, life coaching, and I do a weird. I call it life coaching, but in fact, I've brought in spiritual direction and I brought in
Wow.
my counseling background.
Wow.
And so we can do all of it. Like if you ever heard, like you need a coach, you need a spiritual director, you need a therapist.
That's you.
And I just do it all.
And occasionally you're a florist,
Yeah, right.
So are you, I hate to use the word happy, it's so American, but do you feel more content?
I am definitely at peace. And there's the thing, right? I figured it out. I gave up chasing happiness. I don't chase happiness.
Yeah.
I chase peace. Because what I find out is when I'm at peace, right? Happiness follows.
Wow. It's beautiful. And you get to wear those great outfits now.
Right? This is my work uniform. It doesn't look like a work uniform, but it's my work uniform.
Yeah, that's the best. That's the best. We can go shopping now.
I love it. I love it. Come on down, fly down. Take a couple weeks.
I'm on the next plane. I gotta go. No, thank you so much. So much for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
And all your other endeavors will be available on the website so people can read about what you're up to. But I can't thank you enough. It was too short, but it was wonderful.
Thank you. Well, and thank you for this opportunity.
No, I'm super happy for you. Yeah. And thank you for letting me in.
Thank you. Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.